Sumeet Aggarwal, Managing Director, Midmark Janak, based out of Mumbai, India. Hospital beds have always, in human history, played an important role in the recovery process of an individual or a patient. And if you look at it today, the size globally of the hospital bed industry happens to be about $2.5 billion. India has a very minuscule share in that of about $100 million, and it is evolving rapidly at a growth rate of around 12 to 14%, both globally and in India. And Asia stands to benefit the most out of this because that's where we see the most population growing and overall the growth happening. India is very unique because it has, over the last 70 years post-independence, the hospital beds have evolved in a very different way. From very rudimentary Fowler to semi-Fowler beds, today we see very sophisticated beds which are based on or made out of materials which are based on polymers, mild steel and stainless steel. These were things which were not taken into account in the past. The market, as I said, over the last, if I was to go from 2000 onwards, from the year 2000, really the private sector and the corporatization of the private sector has taken off in a very different direction in India. And if you see that in the private sector, the measurement of investment is always by number of beds. So they will say, how much does it cost to put a hospital with so many beds? And always the number of beds determines that. So first of all, it remains an important factor in terms of consideration of the investment quantum, not only in India but globally. And with the advent of the private sector and the change in the preferences of patients, where they are spending more on healthcare and they have choices today, not to go to just one hospital but many, like any other consumer, they demand better services and they demand for better aesthetics. And that has put a lot of pressure in terms of innovation on manufacturers to really come out with lighter, durable, better feature beds. And that is something which we are seeing continually in India. So Janak Healthcare was, erstwhile name was Metal Beds India. And this was in 1951 where the company started manufacturing in Mumbai. And the first bed was supplied in 1956 to Mahatma Gandhi Hospital in Mumbai. And again, as I said, this was a very basic bed with Fowler, semi-Fowler positions. And Janak Healthcare led the, or Metal Beds India, which later on got transformed, the name changed to Janak Healthcare, really was the first mover in terms of bringing innovative solutions to the healthcare market in terms of the hospital bed. So in 1970, they were the first ones to introduce the ICU bed, which has many different positions in which the patient can recover faster. In 1980s, they were the first company to bring the labor and delivery bed into India. And since then, it's not only Janak, there are many other companies who have done that. In 2007, there's a company by the name of Midmark, which is manufacturing hospital equipment out of Ohio in the United States, saw the attractiveness of the market and made a strategic investment in Janak Healthcare, and since then has taken over the entire stake of Janak Healthcare in 2014, and now our company is called Midmark India. So if we look at India today, we have 1.6 million beds installed in India. And the new healthcare policy, which was released by the government in March of 2017, mandates that there are a minimum of 2 beds per 1,000 in India. The WHO standard is 3 beds per 1,000, but India aspires to at least get to that 2 beds per 1,000 number, which really translates into about 2.6 to 3 million beds over the course of the next decade, which has both replacement and new beds. Now, this is a huge undertaking by the government to bring healthcare and make it accessible to the masses, which has allowed us as Midmark India to really look at ways in which we will work in this market. The market is evolving, as I said, at a pace of about 12% per annum. The government has taken an active role in this, where they are procuring faster. They are tendering across various states and getting the products which will allow for better healthcare delivery in these states. The private sector itself is also investing heavily in terms of bringing better care to the masses. So overall, the market, if I believe, for Midmark India is really evolving at a pace of about, we are seeing a growth rate of about 10% or access every year. And this is something which I believe will continue for the next decade or so. It's becoming competitive as well, and that is good for us, because we look at ways in which we are going to do and get inspiration from our competition, and bringing out products which are better and allowing for better comfort of the patients and giving them better recovery faster. The key challenge which we see today happens to be that while the government is promoting Make in India, which we are completely supportive, and we are pretty much an Indian manufacturing company with a ownership possibly in the US, but it is everything from scratch is manufactured in India, and we end up exporting a lot of what we produce as well. But we see that there are still cheaper alternatives available, which are not as big on quality, coming from countries from other parts of Asia, particularly China. And that's something which I feel that the government has to play an important role in terms of curbing those imports into India. And the tendering process, while from the government doesn't allow Chinese firms to participate, we still see that in the private sector they happen to make a big difference in terms of their procurement needs. But over time, I think the government will also have to look at how the GST will have to be implemented. There were some changes in terms of the GST norms, especially in terms of the mattresses on beds, which got reduced because there was a huge confusion, and today it stands at 18% for both the bed and for the mattress. But in terms of getting input credit for hospitals, it will be necessary that the government takes some step, because we are a supplier to hospitals, and unless they get input credit, they are not able to subsidize healthcare, and it makes the whole system costly. So what I would also see as a challenge is that we allow some levy of GST on hospital delivery, because if that happens, then the whole system becomes cheaper for everyone. So in terms of future plans, I believe that most of the growth in India will be coming from Tier 2 and 3 cities. Tier 1 cities are very much saturated. That is something which we are seeing continually. Both the government and the private sector have put in a lot of the resources into Tier 1 cities. Tier 2, 3, 4 is the next really frontier of growth. And for that, we have been very innovative in our approach to these cities, and actually started what we call a Midmark India Experience Center in 14 such cities, where a doctor, a biomedical engineer, the head of procurement, or anyone who is interested, even a patient, can go in and really look at and feel our equipment.